to this community meeting with the Join organization.
Panthers are here. Panthers are here. For uptown. Okay. We come here with our hearts open. You cats to supervise us, where we can be of help to you. What do you want in your community? What do you want here? Are you afraid of you want to take berets off, man, or what?
There were a lot of suspicions about the Black Panthers that they were gun-carrying terrorists.
It was a scenario that I had never been in before. I see some guys with Confederate flag patches. I was a little concerned.
The thing we got to deal with is concept of poverty, man. We got to reach the color thing. See,
the building's not fit for dogs to live in, but humans having to pay $144 a month for the thing. They sell the building, to new ownership. What we need is understanding among the people, coalition between the people to stick together and take them owners and put them over here in the lake somewhere.
Right on. Once you realize, man, that your house is funky with rats and roaches, same way a black dude's house is, once you realize that your brother's been brutalized by the cop, the same way the west side and south side is, once you realize that you are paying taxes for the cops to whoop your ass, you're paying them, and you're paying them to kill you. Deal from there. The same thing's happening on the south
Bob
side.
Lee turned out to be quite an organizer. And he says, yeah, my name is Bobby Lee, but my real name is Robert E. Lee. And we all laughed. We said, you got to be kidding me.
Who's here that want to see this thing move? Yeah, man. Right on. Well, the first thing we talk about now is how we're going to organize. Where are we going to organize? And, we're all going to get run out of here eventually.
That was a good meeting. It was. It got everybody riled up.
Welcome to another episode of the Propaganda Report. I'm your host today. I'm Compton J, or Jay. Like literally at the last second, I changed the video. It was going to be a different video, but I was feeling a revolutionary vibe. This message in this video is something RBN is going to start pushing very hard. After our meeting, we're going to develop, once we have our meeting, things will be different. But nowhere in that video did they say who's a Trump supporter, who's a Nixon supporter. Nowhere in that video. So I'll leave it at that because I don't want to go into a tangent. We have a great topic today, a much needed topic. Now, I don't know how long this stream is going to be up. So hopefully, let's start liking the stream now and let's get as many people live here because there's two topics that I've noticed will get immediate sort of scrutiny is CIA and war. So those two things, if you're talking about that and it's not the state line, that's when your content is vulnerable to be taken down. So hopefully we get a lot of people here to watch this live and as many as can watch it on replay. Maybe it won't, but just saying that let's just say it's a high possibility that it could be taken down. That's the video. Now the video I was gonna do, let's see where it's at. Was concerning this topic, of course. So let's move to that video so we can begin the topic, or I'll set it up actually because I do want to do a like check and a comment check or a chat check. But this is the video. We'll start out with this video for the topic. Actually, let's play it, and then we'll do the chat check and the like check. So let's go ahead and play it. Like this stream. Don't know how long it's going to be up, but this is the origin of the CIA, and I'm going to play a short clip. It's like 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. Kind of gives an overview and then we'll get into another video that's a little more detail, not a lot, but a little more detail.
It's taken me 30 years of study without myself being a CIA officer to try to understand how the CIA operates. You have to read dozens and dozens of books. I mean, it takes years of study to understand how the CIA operates. So it's virtually impossible to explain it in a few minutes. But they do. The CIA is organized in a couple of, in a particular way that allows it to do the things that it does. First of all, it operates outside the laws of the United States. The Congress has given the CIA the right to commit crimes in foreign countries and also not to be prosecuted for those crimes in the United States. So the entire judicial system in the United States has been structured to allow the CIA to do these things. It's not that a lot of people frequently refer to the CIA as somehow being a rogue agency or doing things without approval. But the CIA, everything it does is approved by Congress and the executive and the Supreme Court. It has the complete backing of the three branches of the United States government. No law enforcement branch in the United States, including the FBI, can prosecute the CIA for any crimes that it has committed. So you have to understand what the CIA's mandate is. It is given a mandate to do these things. It is allowed to do these things. You just can't know about the things that it does.
Absolutely. And that is Douglas Valentine. He's wrote several books, but the book that we've kind of been covering, where this content is from, the CIA as Organized Crime is the name of the book. The CIA as Organized Crime, Douglas Valentine. So you can look him up. This happens to be the same person that for our second video. Actually, I'll switch this, but let's go to chat checks first. But he's also part of the second video with Abby Martin that we're going to be covering. So let's go ahead and do a chat check. Yeah. I didn't have to read that first comment. The options are silence. Yes. I won't read all of them. So I'll just put them up. Hello, good vibes. Yes. Only because it's a lot of times the algorithm picks up the sound and take videos down. So maybe I'll just put it up and allow everybody to read it themselves instead of me reading some of the more spicier ones here. Yes, love Abby's content. Yes, a lot of Abby Martin people. Sub family. All right, so it looks like the chat is looking good. Yeah. All right, so I don't see any issues. I like that comment. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any issues like that. All right, so let's jump into the other video. Now let's, I guess, stop sharing that one, and then we will start sharing the content on YouTube. And in the back, that is the General Strike Summit Day 1. The difference between a movement and organization, I think that's that first segment that you're seeing there. Case Study QB and Nick and I covered that. So make sure you check out that if you haven't. Always revisit those summits. You can always find that, wow, I didn't catch that the first time I watched it. But yeah, so let's begin here, and then I'm going to be starting and stopping a lot to making comparisons and reflecting on what it is today, or the real world effects of what they're talking about inside here. So let's begin.
This is a Russian PT-76, the current Red Army amphibious tank. It is now the property of the United States. It was not given to us by the Russians, nor did we purchase it, nor did we capture it in battle. You could say that it was obtained, all 15 tons of it, through intelligence channels. Or you could say we stole it. Once upon a time, spying or espionage was a fairly straightforward game. But we have come a long way rather quickly from Mata Hari. There is something new in the science of spying. It's not just stealing military hardware and secret plans, but using tanks and plans and men to promote our policies around the world and sometimes to overthrow governments we don't like.
What are we, a minute into it? Let me turn this off here. 2 minutes into it. But what I find funny is how a lot of these historical videos, like when I was, is it another one, propaganda video that I did, how they were a lot more open about in public, like this video, what they were doing when their audience was all white. You know what I mean? When it was clearly legislatively in law to discriminate, to legally discriminate. When it was those times when every single person on TV is white, even the commercials, I'm talking about those times. They spoke openly about some of the things they were going to do. It's now that they have a multicultural population that they have to control, that now somehow it's different. Just saying, I noticed that. So let's listen to the rest of this. I'll back it up just a little bit.
Promote our policies around the world and sometimes to overthrow governments we don't like. In the spy business, the dagger is replacing the cloak. And that is what this program is about.
Now, when you hear him say overthrow governments, we don't like, it wasn't, he didn't say, you know, freedom and democracy, they're killing people. You see that, no, this is I guess this kind of illustrates the same thing that I was saying. Like, it's they just saying it out in the open. But let me play you something else right here, actually. That is more contemporary, but it absolutely relates to that very line. So I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to come back. But understand the connection to the beginnings to the present time. So let's listen.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'état, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol. As to that, there's no doubt.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with
I'm allowing it to loop because when it gets to that part, I'm going to stop it. I want you to hear it again.
With all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'état, not here, but other places.
As somebody who has plans, coup d'état is to overthrow governments we don't like. The nation that's founded on this type of ideology never strays away from it. We have to stop pretending. They just learn how to disguise it. Okay. This is why the United States is always going to be fine with colonization, because they did it here. That's why they're fine with Israel doing it in Palestine. You see how they all kind of are friends? So the United States wants us to believe that freedom and democracy countries hang around countries that are committing genocide, apartheid states. That's what the United States wants you to believe. Now let's go back. Actually, let me refresh your memory because I spoke a little bit, because I want to play this and then we'll go back and hear what he says in the other video, which is so clearly very similar, if not identical.
I don't know that I agree with you. To be fair, with all due respect, one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, and that's not what he did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. Ultimately, he did unleash the rioters at the Capitol.
Real planners of coups are offended by this January 6th stuff being called a coup. He's offended. What? Those are just working peasants listening to a moron. Don't offend the profession. He's offended. So let's go back to the other video. It's amazing to me. I just have to suck it in. Sometimes I have to go just take a deep breath because. And then Jake Tapper, the joke Jake Tapper, just sitting there like the obedient servant that he is to the military weapons industry. Now let's continue. Where was that? So let's continue here.
It was a fairly straightforward game. But we have come a long way rather quickly from Matahari. There is something new in the science of spying. It's not just stealing military hardware and secret plans, but using tanks and plans and men to promote our policies around the world and sometimes to overthrow governments we don't like. In the spy business, the dagger is replacing the cloak. And that is what this program is about.
During the past few years, the Central Intelligence Agency has embarked on a rebranding campaign to market itself as a noble, inclusive, and even woke organization. This is in part to erase its dark history, which was once more widely known in the United States. It struggled through decades of controversy, saw their methods scrutinized in the public eye, and they had a reputation for being immoral and unethical, to say the least. But the post-9/11 era opened an opportunity to rehabilitate their image, gain new approval in the public eye, that now they're a force for good. And all that assassination and death squad stuff, well, that's all in the past. Their current rebrand is just the latest phase of this makeover, and in a climate where they now have widespread acceptance in popular culture, academia, and news media, which is why it's so important to document their true legacy and explore why these operations are not just part of their history, but part of their present. That under this progressive veil, they remain the same sinister organization. It's a huge topic to explore, spanning 7 decades and a seemingly infinite list of crimes. But before we jump into the CIA stories, ranging from the utterly absurd to the downright evil, we need to understand how and why the CIA was created in the first place. To do that, I'm joined by Douglas Valentine, author of several books on the CIA, including The CIA as Organized Crime and The Phoenix Program, America's Use of Terror in Vietnam. Douglas, thanks so much for joining me. Can you first start by explaining exactly how and why the CIA got its start?
So, to me, this is a very interesting story. Because of who they're targeting is still the same target. how the CIA was birthed is out of the same worry and target, communism and communists. Capitalists understand, they know that they're exploiting people. Capitalists understand and they know that people are unhappy with capitalism. Capitalists understand that a very few people will benefit from this system and the other people will not. They understand this. This is why it's literally a never-ending battle to suppress communism, socialism. So let's finish listening to the beginning of this, the origin here, which is very, very interesting to me.
The CIA grew out of the Office of Strategic Services in World War II. President Roosevelt knew that the United States was going to eventually have to get into the war, and he wanted to be able to have a force that could report to him on what was happening around the world. That's why it's called the Strategic Services Group. It would be able to go into places where the United States military was not conducting operations. It would be able to go into places that the Germans and the Japanese occupied. And its job during World War II was to go into occupied territories clandestinely, to insert teams in that nobody knew they were there. And this involved creating false documents, smuggling people into countries, and establishing them undercover in these occupied territories. Their first job was to conduct sabotage and subversive activities against the occupation forces. And they did the same thing in Burma and in Indochina and in China itself. There were a clandestine unit that was secretly inserted into occupied territories, established themselves undercover, and then began to conduct sabotage and subversion and psychological warfare operations to try to undermine the morale of the occupying forces. They also then, as they established themselves in these occupied territories, would begin to organize with the resistance in order to actually fight the occupational forces. To
organize with the resistance. Does that sound familiar? Organize with the resistance. So you have conflict in a country they have resources, you exploit that conflict. You go in, send CIA in. We've heard this. We've all seen the videos that they've been taken down on Twitter. I remember seeing a couple where literally a truck pulls up. I forget where it was at. Afghanistan. Truck pulls up where there's a bunch of men. I don't want to give them a name. I don't know if they were soldiers, if they were just a bunch of men. A car just pulls up, dumps a bunch of weapons, not little handguns. These are high-powered weapons out, and then drives off. Yeah. Just crazy stuff. All of that has been taken down. One of the accounts that was posting all those things, it was a big uproar. Man, I forget the account. It had numbers in it. All they were doing is there was no commentary. They were just posting videos of just like secretive things that the United States was doing, the military was doing. I wonder if anybody remembers, but it's not important because they took that account and banned that account. Just crazy. So again, not sure how long this is going to be up. Let me do a like check right here. Make sure. So like this video, let's get a few more people. We're at 211 people. If we can get to 200 likes, that might push us to about 250 people. So let's see if we can push it to 200 likes. We got 210 people watching. All right, so let's get back to the video.
To create militia groups that would actually engage in paramilitary battles and established significant agent networks all throughout the world. One of their jobs, apart from sabotage and subversion and psychological warfare, was to.
But Hillary Clinton says Russia meddled with our shit. What do you call coups? Is that meddling? Is that meddling with elections? But the Americans have been sold on Russiagate. I was one of them. Before he came out with the book, I finally figured out this was some bullshit. I found connection on Twitter. And it just the same thing. They had accounts where people had receipts. I was like, wow, this is some bullshit. But anyway, that's another story to be told. Like just some of the, how I came about to being where I'm at today. From liberal to not liberal, I was more of a, so it was kind of socialist, but from, I don't know, what's the word? Yeah, I guess you can say liberal. From liberal to revolutionist, I guess is my story. So that's for another time, but let's get back to the video.
To collect secret intelligence, to create agent nets, which nobody knew about.
That's really interesting. So they were playing what could be seen as a good role during the war by working with communists against Nazi and Japanese occupation forces. So what changed after World War II?
So all these things were in place at the end of World War II. The president at that time, Truman, wanted to keep the OSS in business, but the military and the State Department, and especially J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, did not want the OSS to continue to exist. Those three forces, the military establishment, the State Department, which was involved with trying to conduct political operations with the world, and the military was trying to conduct military operations around the world, and the FBI, which was involved in intelligence. Those three parts of the government did not want the OSS to exist. At the same time, the military was demobilizing. The military at that time, the U.S. Armed Forces, had 12 million people in uniform around the world, and all those guys wanted to go home. And within a year, the military was down to just over 1 million people. 90% of the soldiers in World War II went home. And they were glad to go home. And people were sick of the war. But, and this is where the CIA comes into being, the Soviet Union was making gains in Western Europe. It was conducting psychological warfare and agent operations inside Italy and inside France and throughout Western Europe. And the same thing in Asia. Communist China would not actually emerge until 1949, but they were really posed a great threat to American industrialists. And so President Truman decided.
American industrialists, not American freedom or democracy. Industrialists, aka capitalists.
He needed to keep the vestige of the OSS in place. And over the next 2 or 3 years, that initial force, which was originally called a Central Intelligence Group, continued to exist in Europe and Asia. And it was very, very small groups of people. The strategic services units were part of the military. And they continued to conduct military covert operations in Europe and in Asia against the communists in those countries. The Cold War had begun, and the CIA in its initial phases was aimed 100% against the Soviets and the Chinese communists. That's what it was existing to do. And it steadily grew. And so did its operations. And its operations were the same as it was in the OSS. They would send teams, basically 3 types of groups, into areas that the Soviets occupied in Europe or were contesting with the Soviets in Europe, and likewise with the communist Chinese.
And what were those three types of groups, and what did they do?
But you notice he keeps mentioning Russia and China because these are communists, these are Marxists. You notice when you hear a capitalist, they say the word Marxist like it's a bad derogatory term, and it's almost like it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. What's that guy on the radio? Mark Levine. You hear him say Marxist. But the point being that the target has always been communism or communist, and that was the target for the development of this. And I was watching some other content. I'm not playing it in this video, but there's a connection between the Homeland Security Department we have now and the Phoenix Project, which was a CIA thing. So yeah, maybe I'll be able to cover that in a different video. So let's continue with Abby and Douglas.
One kind of group was involved in special intelligence, and that's setting up agent nets that nobody knows about, so that you can know what the enemy's plans and strategies are. This early group, which became the CIA at the end of 1947, created what was called a Foreign Intelligence Unit, and they would work with friendly governments and the intelligence services of friendly governments and the police forces of friendly governments, so that they could establish bases in France and Italy, where they were operating into these areas in Europe that were occupied by the Soviets. Those are secret intelligence networks. That's considered the cloak and dagger stuff of the CIA. And then with the military, they were sending in paramilitary groups to work with resistance groups inside these occupied territories. And they would create militias like they do all over the world now.
Let me just rewind it just a second here. I think that sign said communist. You see that there? I thought that's what that said. Comunista. Communist. This is the problem. The workers.
Territories. And they would create militias like they do all over the world now. And they would arm them, and they would bring in guns and communications.
That's literally the same thing they do today.
Radios and stuff like that. And then the third group was called political and psychological operations, and that was basically handled in coordination with the State Department. The whole idea of these political and psychological operations was to shape political and social movements in countries all over the world. And this was not paramilitary, and it's not secret intelligence. It's covert action. It's setting up newspapers, radios, TV stations, businesses, trying to, influence labor unions and international organizations into, at the time it was called, courting the compatible left, trying to get people who weren't sure whether they were going to go over to the communists to come back over to the West.
The institutions of power, which are penetrated and attempts are made to manipulate them, are the political parties, the security services, the military institutions, the trade union organizations especially, the youth and student movements, cultural organizations, professional societies, and in a very big way, the public information media.
Like, these capitalists are serious, man, about this state paper right here. They're serious about this bag they got. They're not leaving anything up to chance. Certainly not this Marx guy with this book that started that put on paper, I'll say, because I can't remember who I was hearing. I was hearing Kwame Ture describe Marx. He was like, Marx is great. He's like he didn't invent socialism or communism. All he did was analyze what was happening and put it on paper. It was like communism has been old, which is, I guess it's it is pretty true. But anyway, that's a tangent. amazing to me. I'm gonna rewind so we can hear this CIA person here. I think they show his name. Let's see if they show his name here.
The communists come back over to the West.
The institutions
Former CIA case officer. Let's listen.
of power, which are penetrated, and attempts are made to manipulate them.
It looked like it said his name. I want to make sure I say his name just in case somebody wants to look
The
him up.
communists come back over to the
I think it said Philip. I'm trying to get his last name.
West.
The institutions of power, which are penetrated, and
Philip
attempts are
A.
made
I
to
couldn't make it
manipulate
out.
them, are the political.
But listen to where he's saying the CIA is infiltrated, is targets, where they target to infiltrate or influence.
Or whether they were going to go over to the communists, come back over to the West.
See if you can make out his
The
name
institutions
too.
of power, which are penetrated, and attempts are made to manipulate them, are the political parties, the security services, the military institutions, the trade union organizations especially.
Trade union organizations especially. He also said political parties.
The youth and student movements, cultural organizations, professional societies, and in a very big way, the public information media.
In a very big way, the public information media. So if they're in public information media, they're in all of the institutions and organizations that he has mentioned. They're in both parties.
We need powerful radio stations abroad, operated without governmental restriction, to tell in vivid and convincing form about the decency and essential fairness of democracy.
And this was really where the CIA, as it began to emerge after World War II and as it began to contest with the Soviet Union and the Communist Chinese, was really starting to make its inroads with this political and psychological covert actions.
Even in Tibet, where rebels fight the Chinese communists, there is the CIA. If it would help, the CIA would recruit the abominable snowman.
And then the Korean War erupts. And right after the People's Republic of China was formed, and at that point, paramilitary operations, the military aspect of the CIA started to emerge as equal in importance to these political and psychological operations. And that's when the CIA's paramilitary branch started operating all throughout Southeast Asia, into South America and parts of Europe. And all of this coalesces in 1952 through 1954, the CIA as we know it, as a result of Korea and the creation of the People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union getting the atomic bomb and beginning the battle for the satellite countries in Eastern Europe, when all of that started to climax around 1952, 53, 54. That's when the CIA as we know it emerges fully intact.
This is the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government. Everybody knows it, although the sign on the gate reads Bureau of Public Roads.
It is.
Everybody knows it, but the sign reads something else. Now, what I didn't know, I thought the CIA was sort of had their infrastructure built out, their infrastructure of secrecy built out in the beginnings, and they did not. What happened is they ran into issues with some of the operations they wanted to handle with the public relations, and that's when they started to turn to be more covert, right into law things that they didn't, law didn't apply to them, as he mentioned in the intro video. But let's let them explain a little more about that.
Is highly organized. It has an administrative staff. It has agents all over the world, which was one of the most important features of it. It has a whole scientific and technological branch that comes up with all sorts of fancy ways to spy and wage war and smuggle things in and out of countries. And that whole research and development and scientific division of the CIA was one of the foremost important branches of the CIA, the technological aspect.
These are some of the tools of your trade, weapons of democracy. Learn them well.
Weapons of democracy.
And their targets became very specific.
Weapons of democracy. Just twisting the understanding of democracy. That's crazy.
Specific at this time. What criteria would make you subject to CIA operations?
Getting into the philosophic and historical origins of the CIA, why the United States is a capitalist country, and why it finds communism so threatening, and it involves the part of the CIA which was engaged in economic warfare. You have to understand all those dynamics in order to understand why the CIA was created and why it goes after the communists, and that's a whole other thing.
America is the major obstacle that stands between the gravedigger and his intended victim. Here is target number 1 for the Reds. And who's in the bullseye? You are.
During World War II, the OSS.
Then they gotta make communists and communism this other thing. What I want to hear is I want to kind of go back here to this part. Did I go back too far? My bad, everybody. I may have. Oh no, here it goes. All right, so I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning when he started.
Finds communism
sorry. I'm trying to read what's on the screen here about Italy.
The philosophic and historical origins of the CIA, why the United States is a capitalist country,
Italy faces choice of dictatorship or democracy. That is a movie title, I guess. But let's, and there's a director if anybody wants to look it up, George Putnam. All right.
And why it finds communism so threatening, and it involves the part of the CIA which was engaged in economic warfare. You have to understand all those dynamics in order to understand
economic warfare. So when you get those people who, well, socialism never this, socialism never that, socialism have never been able to fully express itself without capitalist CIA coming in and trying to destroy it. Has never existed without that happening. And we're hearing the story. The creation of this, part of the creation of the CIA is because of this fear. So let's listen to the rest of this.
Understand why the CIA was created and why it goes after the communists, and that's a whole other thing.
America is the major obstacle that stands between the gravedigger and his intended victim. Here is target number 1 for the Reds. And who's in the bullseye? You are.
During World War II, the OSS worked very closely with communist resistant groups all over the world. The OSS was working with Mao Zedong in China against the Japanese. They were working with the communists in France and Italy against the Germans. And then all of a sudden at the end of the war, and this was one of the reasons why J. Edgar Hoover did not want to see the OSS continue in existence, is because he felt it was riddled with communists.
So the OSS, back when the United States, and people don't know their history to understand that the United States and Russia used to be allies. And I forget who it was. I think it may have been, is it Chris Hedges? Richard Wolff, who tells the story. I think it was on a Jimmy Dore video. He tells the story of how, you used to be able to go in to a post office and you would see the United States president next to Stalin, shaking hands, showing solidarity. they teamed up with them to get rid of the Nazis. Then they figured out, wait a minute, this system of communism is fucking spreading. We can't have this shit. And then that's when the script was flipped on Russia and the communists, because they were working with the OSS to defeat the Nazis. I think that's what it said here. Let me just rewind it a little bit.
Worked very closely with communist resistant groups all over the world. The OSS was working with Mao Zedong in China against the Japanese. They were working with the communists in France and Italy against the Germans. And then all of a sudden at the end of the war, and this was one of the reasons why J. Edgar Hoover did not want to see the OSS continue in existence, is because he felt it was riddled with communists. And he felt it was riddled with drug smugglers. I mean, the OSS dealt with criminal gangs. That's how it was able to smuggle agents in and out of countries. They hired hundreds of American mafioso into their ranks so that they could hook up with criminal gangs in Italy who paved the way. So the OSS was not a all-American, in a sense, kind of group, but they, in order to compete on the world stage after World War II, these are the kind of people that it needed. The all-American boys from Yale and Harvard or Texas Tech or Texas A&M, they moved into the leadership positions. And then they ran laws that hid from public scrutiny the composition of the CIA and who they were using as agents. And early on, there was a lot of controversy about all these kind of people that they hired. And so as the CIA evolved, there was one guy.
There was controversy. This is what I was kind of referring to. Controversy about some of the people that the CIA was involving themselves with. Criminal elements in other countries in order to find out things. So that's when they had to start setting up more laws and more bureaucracy to cover up what they were doing. Only to the highest levels of security clearance would get it. So we'll be able to even understand. And the FBI and the president doesn't even know what the CIA is doing more than half the time.
And then they ran laws that hid from public scrutiny the composition of the CIA and who they were using as agents. And early on, there was a lot of controversy about all these kind of people that they hired. And so as the CIA evolved, there was one guy in particular, if I remember his name correctly, it was Lawrence Houston. And he created all the legal moat, if you will, around the castle of the CIA so that nobody in the public, unless they had the highest security clearances, could actually understand what these operations were doing and who the people were who involved, because they were still using. The only way you could spy on communists was to recruit communists.
Uh-huh. As our English friends would say, isn't that a bit sticky? Diplomatically, I mean.
Oh, sure it is. It's real sticky.
One of the problems they had in Korea, which started in 1950, is they originally hired thousands and thousands of Koreans, the CIA did, and turned them into a mini army and sent them against North Korea. And it turned out that they were all North Korean agents, and the whole thing was a big failure. So they had to start figuring out, well, how can we get these people who we're not quite so sure of to do our evil deeds? And this is why it takes so long for the CIA to actually organize itself and organize its own counterintelligence division so it could start weeding out the people who are hustling it.
So it had sort of a bumpy start as far as their goal and people not really being down with it with as far as some of the people they were hiring, and then some of the operations were failed because they were being duped themselves. So they weren't a perfect institution in the beginning. They learned from their mistakes and corrected those mistakes.
as well as the dastardly people that they needed to do its dirty deeds. And all of that took close to 10 years before they could figure out how to do it. But believe me when I tell you, they have it all ironed out now. And they know how to do it seamlessly all around the world, plus which all the covert operations that they put in place starting in 1946, a lot of them have grown. The newspapers they put in place, the radio stations they put in place. One of the things that was very controversial was they were hiring Nazis, thousands and thousands of Nazis.
The United States have been hiring Nazis for for how long? Like, how long have the United States, and they're still hiring Nazis today? When we're talking about the Ukraine, it's just amazing. But let's listen some more about how the United States began to hire Nazis.
1946. A lot of them have grown. The newspapers they put in place, the radio stations they put in place. One of the things that was very controversial was they were hiring Nazis, thousands and thousands of Nazis to fight against the Soviets. And a lot of people of good conscience didn't think this was like, the all-American way to do things, but it was necessary for the CIA to fight the communists in order to hire guys like Ryan Hell Gellert, who had run the German military intelligence agent nets into the Ukraine. And CIA hired this guy and kept his intelligence network in place. And then, of course, this guy, Lawrence Houston.
I'm gonna just have you rehear that again, that part about this guy.
Hire guys like Ryan Hell Gellert, who had run the German military intelligence agent nets into the Ukraine. And CIA hired this guy and kept his intelligence network in place. And then, of course, this guy, Lawrence Houston, put in the legal barriers to prevent anybody from knowing that this was happening. But this is the sort of thing now that the CIA was doing, and what was why the military didn't like it, the State Department didn't like it, and the FBI didn't like it. It was starting to operate in a way that, unless you go back to slavery and Jim Crow and the smashing of labor unions and the oppression of immigrants in the United States, didn't comport with the image that the media was trying to sell to the American public after World War II, which was that the United States had saved the world for freedom and democracy. And it was, the media was working, once it got on board, to try and turn the CIA and these guys who are assassins and psychopathic murderers and completely amoral individuals who are kept on a very short leash, sometimes not so short, by these Harvard and Yale guys who were staffing out the executive management of the CIA. They had tried, pretty much learned how to handle these guys, but they also needed a compliant media to sell the CIA and neo-colonial.
Compliant media. A compliant media. Very important. You see how they understand how to get anything done. It's through the tube, the TV tube, through the media, through the print paper, through the internet. So important to find a media source that's not corrupted by corporatism or corporately bought.
Imperialism, which is what the CIA is all about, not
just rewinding so we can get an understanding of that last
who are
sentence.
Assassins and psychopathic murderers and completely amoral individuals who are kept on a very short leash, sometimes not so short, by these Harvard and Yale guys who were staffing out the executive management of the CIA. They had tried, pretty much learned how to handle these guys, but they also needed a compliant media to sell the CIA and neo-colonial imperialism, which is what the CIA is all about, not just rolling back communism, but taking over the former colonies of the French and Dutch and English empires, which had been devastated by World War II. And part of the whole purpose of the CIA historically was to displace all these former colonial powers and to take over their colonies. The Queen's crown is, like bespeckled with jewels from Burma and India, and England had made and France had made fortunes for its industrial elite by taking all the tin and rubber and oil out of all these countries around the world. Now the United States wanted it. And so they were working.
You see how they stumbled on to what they are today? They did a lot of some of the same things, but then this extracting resources from places, that's the thing. Let me rewind it there so you can hear him talk about that.
And to take over their colonies. The Queen's crown is, like bespeckled with jewels from Burma and India, and England had made and France had made fortunes for its industrial elite by taking all the tin and rubber and oil out of all these countries around the world. Now the United States wanted it. And so they were working against all their allies as earnestly as they were working against the communists. And all this stuff had to be hidden from the American public so that Congress could appropriate billions and billions.
The whole stop communism is not stop communism for regular people. It's stop communism for the capitalists. That's what the whole stop communism thing is for. But they make it seem like that's why they have to attach it to dictatorship. They have to attach it to as if it's synonymous, as if capitalism is synonymous with democracy. So this is part of that sort of, I guess, psychological ops. But let's continue.
Billions and billions of dollars to funding the CIA and covering for it so it could advance. And again, this goes back to the history and philosophy of what America is, this endless expansion. As soon as the continent had been conquered and once slavery had been eliminated, there was no place left for the American industrialists to go. Unions were being created and people were starting to get a fair wage, and there were things like a 40-hour work week on the horizon. And so all these industrialists, in order to continue making huge profits, had to move overseas. And World War II and the OSS paved the way for all the military bases, the 800 military bases that are around the world. All of those military bases, except for a few that were established at the end of World War II, all of those military bases that now exist, the CIA paved the way for all of them clandestinely. And that's the role that historically the CIA plays in terms of America's rarely expressed but implicitly understood divine right to rule the world.
And that's literally it. That's the end of the video, but that's literally it. I'm gonna play that last line again, but it sums up to that. The United States' divine right to rule the world. That's why all of us are suffering. That's why that's why our comrades all over the world, from Venezuela to Afghanistan to Palestine, it's because of that. So let me play that last sort of line again here. Very powerful to me. So let's listen.
100 military bases that are around the world. All of those military bases, except for a few that were established at the end of World War II, all of those military bases that now exist, the CIA paved the way for all of them clandestinely. And that's the role that historically the CIA plays in terms of America's rarely expressed but implicitly understood divine right to rule the world.
Never express, but explicitly understood. And you can see that still, even in, what happened with the, the Nord Stream pipeline, between Germany and Russia, the issues that they're having with China. When they say they're a threat, they mean financial threat most with China. But people think regular Americans, lay people who aren't knee deep in this stuff, they're a threat. What are they doing? They have to connect it to some sort of physical war threat when it's actually a threat of capital or capitalism. But it's brazen. But this, wow, I can't believe this episode is this short. There is one other thing, actually. Not that I'm ending the stream right this second. I don't want you to think that. I'm just that I thought I would not get through this video as quickly as it did. But let's go to this other part, because there's this. Now I'm going to play you the full thing. Now I've shown you like an intro of this, but that intro is missing like a good minute and a half of footage. So I'm going to play this so we can see the full version of it. We saw about 1 minute and 45 seconds when it's actually about a little bit over 3 minutes. Very a great summation of what the CIA, who they are and what they're doing. So let's listen to this also. Let me make sure it's queued up here on the screen. Let's listen. So this is him talking about the actual book, and it's titled "The CIA as Organized Crime." You can search it on YouTube.
It's taken me 30 years of study without myself being a CIA officer to try to understand how the CIA operates. You have to read dozens and dozens of books. I mean, it takes years of study to understand how the CIA operates. So it's virtually impossible to explain it in a few minutes. But they do. The CIA is organized in a couple of, in a particular way that allows it to do the things that it does. First of all, it operates outside the laws of the United States. The Congress has given the CIA the right to commit crimes in foreign countries, and also not to be prosecuted for those crimes in the United States. So the entire judicial system in the United States has been structured to allow the CIA to do these things. It's not that a lot of people frequently refer to the CIA as somehow being a rogue agency or doing things without approval. But the CIA, everything it does is approved by Congress and the executive and the Supreme Court. It has the complete backing of the 3 branches of the United States government. No law enforcement branch in the United States, including the FBI, can prosecute the CIA for any crimes that it has committed. So you have to understand what the CIA's mandate is. It is given a mandate to do these things. It is allowed to do these things. You just can't know about the things that it does, and it's wrapped in secrecy. And the first 2 criteria that the CIA follows is that when it considers launching an operation, that operation has to meet 2 criteria. First of all, it has to have some intelligence potential. It has to be, provide substance to the CIA's mill. It has to have some potential to do something that's of importance to the CIA. The second criterion, it has to be absolutely deniable. If it can never be found out or discovered.
Plausible deniability. It has to be a something that they can deny.
Covered. So the CIA doesn't do anything unless it can deny it. And how it goes about denying and structuring its operations so that they are deniable is like the first thing that you have to understand. And it does it through its relationships with all the other branches of government in the United States. The CIA officers do not walk around presenting themselves to people overseas as CIA officers. They present themselves as State Department officers or military officers or as private businessmen. They all operate undercover so that everything that they do is deniable. And of course, the captains of the media industry, all the major publishers, all the major editors, all the major correspondents are aware of this, and they go along with it because you have to keep it secret.
I'll pause it there, but you can read what the next part is coming up. He kind of goes into an anecdotal story about, not an anecdotal story, he goes into the Phoenix Project. And it's pretty long, so but we're not going into that because today's video is just about the origin of the CIA. So we know when it began, we know when it officially kind of became an agency known as the CIA. I think he said 1947, I think he said. But we see what it spun out of. The OSS, and at the time was working, because this is about the war. At the time, this is Roosevelt. This is about the war with Germany, with Nazis. At the time, they are working with communists. They're working with them to defeat Nazis. But then things change when they see that, they see what happens in China with Mao. They see what happens and see what's happening with Russia, and that communism is growing, and capitalists, industrialists, as he refers to them in this video, they can't have that happening. That's the name of his book right there. You can see, or that's what it looks like. The CIA. Let me see if I can read the subtitle here. It says how illegal. Oops. Maybe if I'm. No, it doesn't go off. How illegal operations corrupt America and the world. Doug Valentine, just like it sounds. The CIA as organized crime. So check that book out. Let me read some of these comments. So there was also another part here. Let me see. I'll go see all. I think I have it here. Oh man, so I guess I can give you a preview of this. Something else that I'm wanting to do. Where is it? I guess we can watch this one. I'm sure some of you have heard of this documentary. It's called "Exterminate All the Brutes." And it's given a visual, sort of historic, cinematic version of history, parts in history, stories in history, told from the oppressed instead of the conqueror, the winner. So this is something else I'm gonna be working on. I haven't really figured out how to. I need more to find more content in order to show you this, but I'm sure some of you have seen this or have heard about it. So let's look at it. It's a pretty interesting.
Here is the story we have been told in Columbus's travel journal. They were discovered. But there is no such thing as alternative facts. There is something we need to talk about. 3 words that summarize the whole history of humanity. Civilization, colonization, extermination. This is the origin of the ideology of white supremacy. This is me in the middle, and I just want to understand. Why do I bring myself into this story? Because I am an immigrant from a shithole country. Neutrality is not an option. So you best duck. Or get out the way. It's time to own up to a basic truth. A story of survival and violence. We know now what their task truly is. Exterminate all the brutes.
I think I'll leave it there. It's a pretty good story. Where did I first see that? Let me see here. because maybe I can kind of talk about it a little bit here, but it wasn't on here. It may have been this. So let's check out it. Let's check out a little bit of it, just to get an explanation of what it's about here. So listen to the breakdown, and then we'll listen to a little bit of the interview, maybe 5 minutes. But this is a good story, and then I'm going to do a whole stream on it. But this is, I guess you can kind of call this like a preview of what it's going to be about. So let's listen. Very, very interesting story here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman, joined by my co-host, Nermeen Sheikh. Hi, Nermeen.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.
Well, Republican lawmakers are continuing their attack on schools for teaching students about the true history of the United States, from the genocide of Native Americans to the legacy of slavery. Last week, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell wrote a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, criticizing what he described as the department's promotion of revisionist history, including the New York Times 1619 Project, which re-examined the pivotal role slavery played in the founding of the United States. In his letter, McConnell wrote, quote, "Americans never decided our children should be taught that our country is inherently evil," he said. New York Times reporter Nicole Hannah-Jones, who created the 1619 Project, responded by saying, quote, "Republicans across the U.S. are pushing laws to mandate so-called patriotic..."
I'm not interested in this blue-red thing. So let's skip to the thing here. I think it's right about here. Here we go.
Colonialism from the Americas to Africa. The documentary is titled Exterminate All the Brutes. It's directed by the Haitian filmmaker Raoul Peck. It's been
Did I say that earlier? Exterminate all the brutes? Maybe I said something else.
Described as an unflinching narrative of genocide and exploitation, beginning with the colonizing of indigenous American land. This is the documentary's trailer.
Here is the story we have been told.
Oh, it's the same.
In Columbus's travel journal.
So it looks like it's part of this is the same. Let's kind of fast forward here to here. There we go.
It's available on HBO and HBO Max. Time magazine said the series, quote, "may well be the most politically radical and intellectually challenging work of nonfiction ever made for television." We're joined by the Oscar-nominated Raoul Peck, who joins us from France. He was born in Haiti, grew up in the Democratic Republic of the Congo after his parents fled the Duvalier dictatorship. His past films include I Am Not Your Negro, about James Baldwin, Lumumba, about the Congolese prime minister, the founding leader of Congo, Patrice Lumumba, and the young Karl Marx. Raoul Peck, it's great to have you back on Democracy Now! This is an epic masterpiece, this 4 one-hour documentary series. Can you talk about how you went from I Am Not Your Negro, which was the story of James Baldwin, to creating this masterpiece?
Well, basically, after I Am Not Your Negro, I went throughout the world with the film. I was fortunate to be able.
So he is in France. I think she gave the audience a heads up because there is a sound delay. So you'll see his mouth may not be matching up, but when it goes back to her, it'll match up.
Able to see how the film was received in many different places. And one of the common thread through that was the type of reaction that you just mentioned, like Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. This denial is somehow a sign that they feel that they are entrenched now. They are attacked. There is great fear about some sort of civilization going overboard, and it's, for me, it's a symbol that the type of lies, the type of propaganda, the type of abuse that we have been subject to for during all these years. I'm old enough to have heard many other people like Nick Santorum, Mitch McConnell, and many others throughout the years. The only difference now is that we have the means to counter them. We have the means to tell the real story. And
right. This is what's it's really I don't want to go into another tangent, but this is why they don't like things like the internet. This is why, because now we can see that what the police have been telling us is all lies, because we have it on video. It's kind of the same thing. Like, they can't stop us from telling these stories now. Now your version of what happened is not the only thing that is told. That's in these books. That's not the only story, and it's getting some blowback. So I concur what he's saying here in the video.
And that's exactly what I decided to do, to once for all put everything on the table without any semblance of holding back my punches. It was, everything is on the table. I've been on the table for a long time, except that it was in little bits everywhere. And because, science, sociology, and anthropology, etc., politics have been cut up in little pieces. So we lost the wider perspective. And the film does exactly that, to bring us to the core story, to have the whole matrix of the last 700 years of basically Eurocentric ideology and narrative.
Well, Raoul Peck, in providing this broader historical context, you trace the origins of contemporary modern forms of biological racism to the Spanish Inquisition.
So this is how I began to be interested in this story, because it's it is the tale or the story of sort of the origin of white supremacy. And that's how I came on it. I think that's what I was searching. I found this because I hadn't heard about it until a couple of days ago.
And the so-called purity of blood statutes, that is limpieza de sangre, that was a means of distinguishing old Christians from conversos, that is Jews, but also Moors, from the pure blood of Christians. These laws, you say, are the antecedents of the ideology of white supremacy. For the first time in the world, the idea of race based on blood was enshrined into law. So how should we understand the continuities between the purity of blood statutes and the forms of racist violence we witness today? Because the entire argument of this truly magnificent work is that the past is not really past. It is, as you say, the past has a future that we can't anticipate.
Well, the thing is that we are accustomed to not see history as a continuity, as you say. And
so I can sit here and listen to this type of stuff. This is I'm interested in this type of stuff, so I'm not gonna make everybody else do. But I'm gonna be working on something to kind of speak to this more in depth. I want to more visit be able to get access to the actual content of, because I think she said it's for 1 hour. I think she said that. I want to get more access than just trailers to the content. I think we might have HBO Max. I want to see if I can pull that up on my. Anyway, I'll figure it out for whenever I do it. But that is upcoming. Also going to be working on something. Let me see what I have the title. Tell you what the title is, so I can get it right here. Working on that. Also, I have stuff ready, but I have to fill it, like the Vanguard. Are we talking about that? That's going to be through I Am the Revolution. But the one I'm looking up is, where is it? Which one was I going to do? Oh, The Last Queen of Hawaii. Working on that one too. So just to talk about how they completely stole Hawaii. That story of the last queen of Hawaii is just terrible. But anyway, like this stream. Also know that we are always, or we're still raising money for housing for JB. I know we're not good at fundraising. People tell us that all the time. Because we're always on these topics, we're not the fundraising, but we're still raising that money for housing and everything. That breakdown is on our Twitter. It's also in our fundraising video. But let me see if I can at least put I guess I can just type it in here. So Venmo and Cash App are both mutual aid forever. It's pretty easy. Forever. So Venmo has the @symbol and Cash App has the $, but that is the tag. You can donate whatever you can send, $5, $10. I think we just hit $1,500 yesterday with a couple of donations we got yesterday. Let me just see. Oh, we're almost there. A few more dollars. So yeah, we're right at $1,500. The target is 10,000. We have to do better at fundraising because I completely believe it would have more if we were actually doing this all the time. But if you're able to contribute, please do. And this is to help. 70% of this is for housing. Most of that is for JB. He tells the story in one of our fundraising streams about what's going on with this housing situation. So you can check that out if you want to get the details. It's listed under the playlist RBN Live Tuesdays. I think it's the first or second episode. RBN Live Tuesdays. You can check that out if you want to find out like the details of where these funds will be going. But that is a link. Also, at the bottom there, you can see join our Substack. Let me see if I can get this to stop scrolling just for a second. Put it on the screen here. See how it looks. There we go. Join our mailing list and our Substack there, and then you can support us on Patreon. That is always the best way to support us. If you're able to, you can also support us by retweeting, by liking our videos, by telling people about us, getting involved in your community. That's also helping. So I think that's all I'm going to cover today. I don't want to keep you here longer than I have to. So we got to about an hour and a half. Let's change this back to scrolling. Put that back on the screen. This has been the propaganda report, and I'm going to end. Wow, this video. Let me switch screens that are sharing here so you can see. On my way out, I'll kind of just so you can see the comments of this video from John Bolton. Just some of the comments. It's a bunch of quote tweets. People just can't believe what this guy is saying here in this video. I guess I can leave you with this video. Do I want to leave everybody with this video? Maybe not. Let's get something better because that's a pretty disturbing video. But check it out. Check it out if you haven't. Check out the story, I should say, not necessarily the video. But check out the story. Also, there's this video here, the case against the professional managerial class. Make sure you check that out. It's I think it's a kind of an important stream to understand the mindset of the professional managerial class, who that's just another name for reformists, which is another name for the old left, which is another name for the boutique. So it's the same people. It's just that these are different names that we've been using. All right, so I think I'm gonna go with one of the first historical videos. I do prefer the historical ones, although I mean Kashama is always good. All right, so yeah, let's go with a historical one. That was the Ice T one, Ice Cube one. Maybe not Ice Cube. And I did the Martin Luther King one last week, so let's see if we can find something else for everybody. Maybe not historical. Let's see if there's anything else that's good. I'll pick something else. If it doesn't have to be historical, I guess. I remember that video. I think I want to go with this one because Kashama is great. This video has like 7,600 views, so Kashama is great. And she talks about having a progressive primary challenger for Joe Biden, but not from the Democratic Party. So I'm going to leave you with this video. Thank you for joining the propaganda report on the origins of the CIA. And look for that content I'll be doing on the last Queen of Hawaii and on Exterminate All the Brutes, I think is the name of the documentary. We're working on something for that too. And also the Vanguard also. So leaving you with this video from Bad Faith. And it's when they had Chris Hedges and Kashama Sawant talking about strategies from the left and why not the Democratic Party. So the stream will end after this video. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you probably not until the weekend. So I'll see you guys later. See everybody later. So thank you for watching.
There absolutely should be a progressive challenger from the left in a militant campaign. I absolutely don't think it should be from the Democratic Party. And I do want to address the specific names that you brought up. But before doing that, I want to say it's much more about the strategy, the political strategy that we as working people use to bring a real challenge to the Democratic and Republican candidates. And the starting point, the ABCs of that strategy are you don't run as a Democrat. Because look at what they did to Bernie Sanders. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry of progressive Democrats supported Bernie in 2020. They were, when I went to the Tacoma Dome to speak at Bernie's rally, they were all there with me. I know these people. They don't support Bernie's politics, but they were there because it was so easy. There was nothing at stake to get on the Bernie bandwagon at that time, and yet then go ahead and support Biden once Bernie was crushed, because we all knew that was going to happen. The Democratic Party elite were going to use some trick or another to get Bernie off the books. And then you got James Clyburn, you got South Carolina, and lo and behold, it happened. We didn't know exactly how it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So the first obligation we have as people on the left, if we are serious organizers, if we have any loyalty to the working class, is to first be crystal clear about that. Whether it makes you popular or not, be crystal clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And I don't want to hear these things that people come up with on the left where they'll say, well, it's the ballot line, it's the technicality. No, this is no technicality. This is, if you don't run as an independent, you are not taking on the fight that needs to be taken on, which is to present an independent fight back. And if you don't, Bernie was the strongest expression so far of the burning desires that working people have. And I have a lot of appreciation for Bernie, but look what happened. It went nowhere.